Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm inside the AWS Sports Forum at AWS reInvent. I'm with Shelby Williams. Shelby, just a quick intro to you.
Absolutely. First of all, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. My name's Shelby Williams. I'm on the AWS Sports Marketing team, and the Sports Forum is really the aggregate of everything I've worked on all year long with our amazing sports marketing team activating with all of these partners.
Yeah, well, it's no secret to anybody. I'm a big sports fan, and I'm a big tech fan, so the intersection of the two, I couldn't wait to get over here.
Perfect.
I might spend all day over here. And so the purpose of this, it's pretty big. What are you hoping to accomplish by setting this up?
You know what? The way you described it actually is exactly what we want to accomplish. It's the intersection of AWS technology in a way that's super relatable, where you can take your passion, whether it's for F1 racing or for American football or for football, and you can see where we come into play there and how AWS is powering the greatest sports leagues in the world, and people can get really hands-on with it. So it's a chance to get hands-on with generative AI and get hands-on with things that we're actually doing with these teams and experience our tech through the lens of something that you already love.
Yeah, and I think part of this is the art of the what's possible.
Yes.
Right? Because the sports leagues are always looking to one-up each other. So perhaps the best way to show what's in here is for us just to hit it with your stations. You up for that?
I would love to. Let's
All right,
go.
so let's go. All right, Shelby, we're here at Bundesliga. That's a relatively new partnership for you, right?
It is. It's actually a new renewal. We've been partners with them for a few years, and we just decided to renew because this is one of our favorite partnerships. I have to say, the Bundesliga community is so active that in not only Germany, but around the world, everyone loves some soccer, and Bundesliga does a great job of innovating. They drive this amazing culture of innovation. So there's always something new that they're serving up to fans, and they're so engaged.
Yeah, I did a write-up of this actually when you did the renewal, and they collect a tremendous amount of data from a fan perspective. In fact, their match stats, I think is what they call it. Well, why don't you go into that? What can the fan experience here?
That's a great example of their culture of innovation, because as they develop match facts, which is sort of the stat that we help drive with our data, they surveyed their global fan base, and they waited and they received that information from their fans to inform their next development. And they do this all the time. Their app is a great example. They've got a great app that runs on AWS. They have 40 million active users a month, which is amazing.
That is a lot.
Yeah, and for a team, right? Like that's relevant.
That's
with
not
like
the
a
league.
stat.
That's the team.
Exactly. Yeah, it's incredible. So, they're doing innovation like this constantly. We're updating their app right now. They're embedding generative AI features like a generative AI ticker. They've got new broadcast commentary. They are just constantly innovating, and they constantly want to do the newest thing, the fastest thing, and the first thing.
Yeah, and what are some of the things they're tracking? It's I think it's like shot speed, goal percentage.
Yep, and that's an example of what we're tracking right here. So activations like this are a chance for anybody to come in and see the kind of work that we're doing with the league. So this was built by our AWS prototyping team in EMEA. It's a team that, just like our partners, supports a culture of innovation, and they're just constantly ideating. So they built this using computer vision cameras to be able to track ball speed and accuracy in a free kick.
So that's what's amazing, is you're doing that not from RFID tagging, but computer vision.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so you can see the cameras in this activation, and that's a lot like what we're doing in a game with Bundesliga. There's cameras all over the stadium, so we're getting so much rich data from that. So it's not just a few sensors or chips. Yeah. It is full body positioning and data.
And I think one of the things that you mentioned was they're very fan facing. So when I talked to them, they were willing to throw out data points people aren't interested in and bring in new ones that they want.
Yes, absolutely. So they have a set of match facts, which is the sort of stat that they're creating, and we're helping them generate. And they're constantly creating new ones. They're constantly creating new pieces of information for fans to be able to understand the game. And their litmus test for what makes a match fact good is that it helps people learn the game. So this is about, igniting a new fan base, growing the love of the sport, and really helping to explain something and break it down in a way that everybody can understand. Yeah,
and then you mentioned they have generative AI coming?
They do.
And what do they want to do with that?
Yeah, they've got a generative AI ticker that's coming, and so they're able to take text commentary from across the game and then really quickly condense that into highlights for fans. And we're going to see some new things coming up in their app next year and in fan-facing ways. We're doing an example of that here, where we've actually added generative AI commentary to this, and Bundesliga is using that commentary in a way that they can change tonality. So an example of that is like, you have a piece of fact, that somebody absolutely sunk a shot. And you might say that one tone for editorial, and you might say that a different way for social, and you might say that a different way if it's going to, be on the lower thirds ticker. So they're using generative AI to make all those tonal variations and save so much time to go to broadcast.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to that.
Great.
Okay, on to the next station.
Let's go.
Okay, Shelby, we're here at the F1 station. Now, there's a couple things you do with F1. First of all, you're part of the Ferrari team.
That's right.
And then you've got a new experience here. So why don't we start with the Ferrari team, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So having both of those relationships is a really great example of working with an enterprise organization like Formula One. So we're solving these sweeping organizational challenges like, how to store data, how to process that much media that's coming, how to support a broadcast feed. But then supporting a team gives us a different angle because teams are then getting all of that data and they're able to develop race strategies and they're able to ideally win and then get to talk about it in that way. And so
there is no sport that is more data intensive than Formula One.
You're exactly right. And this year coming up is Formula One's 75th anniversary. And so we're really excited. We're going to do a lot of storytelling next year about the progress that sport has made. Like, to your point, there is no more dynamic contrast than a sport that used to be your thumb on a stopwatch and the best engine won to the most data-driven sport in the world. And to really see how far that's come, and AWS has been the conduit of a lot of that in the last decade.
Yeah, and what they can do remote's amazing too. I know in one of the races, one of the teams fixed a fuel leak while the car was driving. So
yes.
It's pretty remarkable.
It's amazing. There's actually a new stat that we have coming out, and a new project called root cause analysis that we'll be talking about a lot next year. And that's where we're able to troubleshoot issues that happen on the track during a race weekend. This is something that used to take days. Like if you get out of a race weekend and there was something that failed on a track, they might find out a few days later and be able to fix it. They can now find out in real time as soon as something has failed on an event weekend and fix it immediately. So things like that has a generative AI component. So things like that are using all this data, all this machine learning, extracting insights, doing it with zero latency, and then allowing them to just up their game.
And I know one of the things you've been doing with Formula One at the league level is allowing fans to engage more. I know, for instance, in Montreal, you allowed fans to create the trophy use generative AI to create the trophy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's an example where we've got partnership rights. Like when we have a title race, we get to furnish the trophy. And we sat down with F1 and thought, how can we make this a really great tech story? How can we engage this fan base? And bring something new to Formula One. They had never used generative AI to inspire a trophy design, so we thought that would be a fun element. And then we were able to open that up globally and let everybody take part.
And you got thousands of entries, right?
Yeah.
For their trophy. Yeah, I think I designed one of those last year at
Great.
Which was kind of fun. So, and then what are you showing here? This is a pick gantry experience. It looks like fans can come here and build a racetrack.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is another example of our generative AI technology at work. Anybody can step up to the screen and use their finger to draw the outline of a made-up F1 circuit. And then we use all of this data that we have to analyze it and tell you how that circuit would perform under real-world conditions, a lot like F1 does.
Yeah, and I see you've gamified it where you have a scoreboard here and ranking the difficulty of and diversity of the different tracks.
Yeah, and when you go...
I'm not sure I'd want to drive some of those.
I know. It might be like a 17-point turn on some of those hairpins.
Yeah.
But as you go through it, you get to see how the tire choice that you make affects race performance. All these things that teams are seeing at an expert level, you can kind of play with at a beginner level and understand the immense amount of strategy that is going into a sport like this.
Yeah, and I know Formula One has really had a big push to try and increase their fan base.
Yep.
And so what are the things are you thinking about with them? Is generative AI, what more can you do with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Formula One is a sport that for a long time, had a fan base that was a singular fan base. And as we think more and more about how people want to receive information and all these different personas that we want to speak to, there's such a mass wide audience with F1. You've got people that have been watching racing their whole life that know everything there is to know about the sport. And then you have a lot of new fans that came, especially with Drive to Survive. They've had this groundswell of a new audience, and these are very different audiences. And so by helping F1 manage their fan data and then be able to speak directly to groups of fans, they can give different information to people that are watching a race for the first time versus people that are tuning in for their 3,000th Grand Prix.
All right, Shelby. Well, AWS powering the most data-intensive sport in the world.
We're here for it.
All right, let's hit the next station.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Okay, Shelby, well, we're here at the golf station, which is one of my favorite sports, maybe my favorite sport. I get to play a lot. I get to visit you guys at the Tour Championship. I know you've done a tremendous amount of work with the PGA Tour. In fact, I think at the Tour Championship, you demonstrated something called AI-generated commentary. So maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the PGA Tour, another example of an organization that has an amazing culture of innovation. Their team is always building and iterating. Their challenge that they bring is that the PGA Tour has got an interesting scenario. If you're watching a broadcast, you are maybe watching whatever featured foursome, but there's 70 other golfers that are playing that you might not necessarily be tracking. And so their ability to sort of take all of the content that they're ingesting and then leverage generative AI with no latency to be able to give commentary information to broadcasters so that you know if somebody's having a hot streak or if something's happening on another hole and they're not being covered, it enables us to react really quickly and tell a great real-time story on a tournament weekend.
Yeah, I think Scott Gutterman, who runs the digital broadcast at the PGA Tour, said was there are literally something like hundreds of thousands of shots taken on a tour weekend, but you get commentary and maybe just a few thousand. Yeah. And I understand it from the TV rights, you're going to show the leaders and maybe just a handful of the more popular golfers. But if you're a fan of, say, Joel Damon, you may never see one of his shots.
100%. And that's why their technology, like Every Shot Live, comes into play, where if you want to see a Joel Damon complete round and see him play 18, you can, because they're catching every shot live, they're capturing that. And so their ability to produce that within their app and within the environment that they're creating is going to allow you to follow your favorite golfer, not just that foursome that's featured in broadcast.
Yeah, and how are you thinking of, and by the way, Joel Damon just got his tour card back, so that was good to see, And I see here we're in front of something called Course Creator, which I did experience a little bit of at the Tour Championship.
Yeah.
What is that and how does it work?
Yeah, this is an example of us wanting to take all of the really complex cloud workloads that we're doing with the tour, which are phenomenal, and distill our technology down into something that every fan can appreciate and can experience. And so we take this to something fan-facing where we invite anybody to step up and use our tools to build your dream golf course. And this is just where, if you've heard of generative AI or if you've had some impression of it, anybody can experience our technology. It's not just restricted to the PGA Tour or these elite organizations. And it's just a really fun experience to get hands-on with the tools.
And maybe build Augusta National, because
100%, little Amen corner.
Yeah. And so what's next in this relationship?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're seeing the tour really lean in on the fan-facing activation, and they know that their fans are really hungry for that too. And so we're going to see a lot of exciting things coming up next year with the tour about taking all of this data that they're capturing and incorporating it into hot streaks on the leaderboard, fan-facing experiences in their app, where we're able to see, hey, maybe if my favorite golfer isn't featured on the broadcast, but if they're having an amazing week, which we know for a fact based on all the data that we have on them, we know what a good week looks like, they can give us those insights and really condense them down for a fan. So we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, and I do think from a fan-facing perspective, I guess it's like we talked with ZKSports, the nuances of golf, unless you're a hardcore fan, you may not understand why it's difficult to putt from that spot on the green. But I know if you could tell me that, a tour player is more likely to three putt than one putt, that just adds a little bit of tension.
Yes. That
for the casual fan that just watching may not have had any idea was there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even thinking about using generative AI to pull historical data. So being able to say the last time that Rory was on this hole, or the last 4 times that Rory was on this hole and he had a 12-foot putt, this is what it looked like. And so we can make these really statistical predictions based on information that we know to be true.
Yeah. Well, we know he misses the 3-foot putt, so.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So, all right, one more stop, right?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, Shelby, well, this is the last stop. I'm going to miss you. So now we're at NFL, and I guess from a fan perspective, this is at the top of the charts because of fantasy football. I've noticed that on a lot of the broadcasts lately, they're talking about My Cause, My Cleats. We're at that station now. Talk about what that is and how you're working with the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with the NFL for years. Since 2017, we've had a partnership. And again, we do incredible things with the NFL, from optimizing the way that they schedule their season to thinking about NFL films and media and all the archives that we store for them. There's always a ton going on. My Cause, My Cleats is a really special one because it's a social impact campaign that the NFL has driven for a number of years. And they allow players to custom design their cleats and wear them on the field during play, during these specific weeks of the year that are happening now.
Yeah.
And the whole point is to bring awareness to a social impact cause of their choice. And so you'll see players
and the player gets to pick, right?
100%. Yeah, and that's the whole point of it. It actually started when a player for the Bills wore a cleat that wasn't sanctioned because he wanted to bring awareness to a brain cancer organization, and he was fined.
Yeah.
And so he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'll double your fine, and I'm going to donate it. And then everybody sort of realized that this was a good thing, and it started a movement, like many things do.
A little bit of egg on the NFL's face there for that one.
Now it's sanctioned.
Yeah, now the scheduling part of it I find interesting too, because that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I remember in the past when they were doing it, trying to do it manually, it's how far the team has to travel, who they played before.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is so much that goes into it.
Right?
It's massive.
Yeah.
There's a 1 quadrillion possible scheduling outcomes, and there's 28,000 inputs in the schedule, and it's things like stadium availability, the amount of rest and recovery that a player needs to be healthy and have a long, successful career. Things like, promotional spots, like only one team or so many teams can play on Monday Night Football versus Thursday Night Football, and these kind of proprietary events, things that would help ratings. And so there's so much that goes into making a schedule for the NFL. It's a really cool, complex problem to solve.
Huh. And talk about next-gen stats. I think if you're a NFL Red Zone fan, you always hear Scott Hansen talking about the next-gen stats.
Yep.
But that's been a long-time partnership with the NFL.
100%.
Yeah.
Next-gen stats were born in 2016. We came into them right away. And, that's a great example of how AWS uses sports to just be part of the conversation of intersection of passion and technology. There's so much data that we're tracking during an NFL football game. And when we can make insights on that and build stats that are meaningful, that are additive to the game, that's our litmus test. Is this additive to the broadcast experience and to the fan experience? We know we've done it right. We've seen this journey of next-gen stats. So I have to say, it's sort of this part journey where, you have stats that give fact, like, the pressure was X, or we know something happened. And that was sort of the beginning of stats. And now it's a cool time because then we'll see this progression where we see probability, like the probability of a tackle or an attempt of something that didn't happen. And that's this very cool evolution where we'll see machine learning and AI and generative AI eventually create things like winning probability, which you'll love for your fantasy team.
Yes. Well, yes. In fact, I have finished second 5 of the last 6 years, so I'm the Buffalo Bills of my fantasy football.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, and in addition to that, you also produce Thursday Night Football, right, as part of Amazon on Prime Video.
Yep.
And I've noticed on that, because that's a cloud delivered broadcast, you do all kinds of interesting things there too, right? With blitz probability, things like that, right?
Yeah, it's amazing getting to have Prime Video as an outlet for that. There's an alternative broadcast, so there's sort of something for everybody. If you like the really rich statistical broadcast, you can tune into that. If you like the nice linear broadcast where you just get to observe the game, there's something for everyone. I think that's the beginning of how we're going to see media and broadcast, right? Is these highly personalized experiences where you can see the game in a way that you want to see it.
Yeah, well, I tuned in late the other night, and when I turned on Prime Video, I noticed there was a rapid recap button.
Yes.
And so I got to quickly go back and watch all the highlights that I had missed.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then that you can't do on regular broadcast TV, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so
it's an amazing vehicle, and the marriage of the technology with that broadcast partnership is awesome.
Okay, well, you got next-gen stats, you got My Cause, My Cleats, Thursday Night Football. What's next when it comes to AWS and the NFL?
Good question. I think we're going to continue to see this evolution of things that are fan-facing. You're going to hear fan-facing as a really good continual thread across sports because this is their customer base, and it matters that we're doing right by fans. And as fans want highly personalized experiences, they want to know what's going on with their favorite player and their favorite team. Or to go visit a team's away game, they want to know exactly what they should go do in that city and have a personally curated itinerary. These are the sorts of things that we're talking about with the NFL that we're going to see delivered in the years to come. The other thing that's going to be, I think, a big play next year is our improvements in player health and safety. This is a game that we're
that's
always...
a big issue.
It's huge. It's huge. And we get so much data off of these players. Historically, they've worn chips in their pads and helmet, and we get a good amount of data. We actually track 15,000 miles of mileage data from every team every week during practice. Wow. That's so much to ingest. This year, 8K cameras are going in the stadiums, and so we're actually going to get 29 different points of data off of an athlete, and we're going to be able to extract so much insight about injury, types of injuries, areas of injuries, plays that are more injury prone, and we're going to see that come to light in things like a new kickoff rule.
Yeah, and do the teams use it as well? Because I imagine once you're tracking that, like, you could probably show a quarterback that on, games that, plays where he's not throwing the ball as well. Maybe his arm angle's down or
100%. Yeah, teams have access to this data, so we capture it at the league level. It's all delivered to teams in a really equitable way, so everybody's got the same access. And then you're exactly right. We also get to make these observations at the league level. And an example of that is as teams are practicing. They come back from their break, they get ready to come practice preseason, and historically, teams would come back and hit it hard, and they would practice and then sort of taper down as they got ready for season kickoff, and then be ready for the season. We observed through all the data that we have that if they actually came in soft in the beginning of the season and switched to a 4-day practice week, that they would reduce lower body extremity injuries, and they did by 25% year over year.
Wow.
That's massive. And I mean, everybody wants their players to be healthy and strong. That's good for the business, that's good for the fans, that's good for the players, of course. And so being able to impact the safety of the sport is something that we take so seriously.
Well, considering the amount they pay the players, missing a quarter of the season is a huge amount of money.
Nobody wants that.
You have the salary caps, you can't just add players.
Correct.
And so that's a pretty meaningful reduction.
100%. This sport is at its best when everybody's having long, healthy careers. So the part that we get to do with player health and safety is really important.
All right, Shelby. Well, I think that wraps up this tour of the AWS Sports Forum.
Thank you so much for coming. We've loved having you.
Yeah, no, can't wait to come back again.
Please do. We'll be here next year.
So on behalf of Shelby Williams from AWS, I'm Zias Caravallo from ZK Research, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the AWS Sports Forum. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time on the next episode of ZKast. Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you.